Okay, let's jump right into this.
Let's do.
We are taking a deep dive into the massive, almost historic military and geopolitical restructuring that has been unfolding along NATO's eastern flank.
It really is historic.
For you, the learner, the core mission today is to cut through all the headlines and figure out what is actually going on.
That's exactly right. We need to answer the central question. What is the actual military commitment being made near the Russian border? I mean, we're talking boots on the ground, heavy armor, readiness timelines.
All of it. And in this staggering effort, is it enough to truly fulfill its mission of deterrence?
That's the billion-dollar question.
And we are not talking hypotheticals here. This is, without a doubt, the largest shift in European defense posture since the end of the Cold War.
Our sources for this, they span the timeline from right after the 2022 invasion all the way through to the strategic and operational updates of, well, late 2025.
So we've got a really clear picture.
We do. And the documents confirm that what we're witnessing is a fundamental shift, a decisive return to what military planners call forward defense.
So the alliance has moved beyond that old idea of a simple tripwire force.
Way beyond it. We're going to unpack the details behind the headlines. Everything from the specific heavy equipment the UK has deployed just 90 miles from the frontier to the immense industrial and logistical challenges the alliance still faces if a conflict ever became protracted.
Right. And our stack for this deep dive is pretty comprehensive. We're drawing on highly detailed UK Ministry of Defense press releases, training reports.
Official NATO documents, too, the ones that outline the whole deterrence and defense of the Euro-Atlantic area concept.
We've also got parliamentary briefings confirming force generation, equipment profiles, and some really sharp strategic analysis from think tanks like the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS.
And of course, media channels giving us that on-the-ground reality of hybrid conflict in 2025. This is, well, it's a crucial moment for understanding European security.
Okay, let's unpack the front line then. The UK is positioning itself as a key, immediate shield for NATO's most vulnerable allies, specifically up in the Baltic region. So how is the UK's continuous presence managed? And what does that persistent commitment actually look like on the ground?
That continuous commitment is formalized under a specific designation, Operation Cabrit.
Operation Cabrit.
Yep. That's the British Army's operational name for its contribution to NATO's multinational enhanced forward presence, or EFP. They have a presence in both Estonia and Poland under that name.
So Cabrit is the physical manifestation of the UK's commitment to Article 5.
That's a perfect way to put it, yes.
And the mandate for it. Is it just about having a presence there, or is there a more defined military mission?
Oh, it's very defined. The mandate, according to the Mahdi materials, is threefold. First, enhancing Euro-Atlantic security. Second, providing robust reassurance to allies who feel immediately threatened.
And third,
and critically, deterring adversaries by making any localized attack immediately trigger a multinational response. This is not, a short-term training rotation.
No. The UK has maintained this continuous presence since 2017.
A long time.
I think we really need to emphasize that term, continuous rotational commitment.
They do.
It means the UK forces are never absent. They are simply cycled through. It's an embedded garrison based primarily at the Tapa military camp in Estonia.
And we're talking about roughly 900 British personnel at any given time, fully integrated into the Estonian 1st Infantry Brigade.
And the geography here is it's vital. The sources repeatedly cite the deployment area in northeast Estonia as being just 90 miles from the Russian border.
Just 90 miles. It's an incredible number.
Wait, 90 miles? I mean, to put that in perspective for many of our listeners, that's less than the drive from New York City to Philadelphia.
Exactly.
That fact alone just underscores the strategic immediacy of this deployment. These troops are truly sitting right on the frontier.
And that proximity is precisely why the political messaging and the sheer physical composition of the force must be heavy, not light. The UK battle group is highly mechanized and designed explicitly for conventional high-intensity defense against a peer adversary.
Okay, this is where we need to look at the hardware. This isn't just standard light infantry. They're bringing serious armor to the fight. What key pieces of equipment anchor this defense?
The core of the UK battle group is its heavy armor component. This includes the deployment of Challenger 2 main battle tanks,
the big guns,
and the Warrior infantry fighting vehicles. The sheer physical presence of a Challenger 2 MBT is, well, it's a political statement as much as it is a tactical advantage. These tanks are designed to absorb and dish out massive punishment.
And they aren't alone, are they? a battle group needs to be self-sufficient.
Absolutely not. A modern battle group is a combined arms force. So beyond the core heavy armor, they integrate significant capabilities. You've got self-propelled artillery units, crucial air defense assets like the Sky Saber system.
Which is often deployed in Poland for wider coverage, right?
That's right, for regional coverage. Then you add anti-tank systems like the Javelin and NLAW, the next-generation light anti-tank weapon. Plus, you have sophisticated reconnaissance drones and engineering assets for rapid mobility and counter-mobility.
So the inclusion of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, it just confirms this is a conventional fighting force prepared for the worst-case scenario.
It does.
Let's pivot to the crucial doctrinal shift that this heavy armor signifies. Initially, after the EFP was established in 2014, the consensus was that these forces were a tripwire.
A political tripwire.
Right. They were small enough that they couldn't possibly hold the line on their own, but their presence guaranteed that if Russia attacked, NATO, and specifically the UK, Canada, Germany, would be immediately involved, triggering Article 5.
That political guarantee was the initial goal, yes. But military strategists, particularly within the Baltic states, they quickly realized the flaw in that plan.
Which what?
Well, if the force was purely a tripwire, Russia might attempt a fait accompli, a lightning-fast armored push to seize territory, present the world with a new border,
and then dare NATO to launch a costly, politically fraught invasion to reclaim sovereign territory.
Precisely. Which would be a disaster. No nation wants to start a war by invading its own occupied ally.
Of course not.
So that operational threat, it forced the doctrine to shift radically. The sources all confirm the current strategy is moving from a political tripwire to a military mandate. Repel, don't expel.
Wait, say that again? Repel, don't expel.
Repel, don't expel.
So those Challenger 2 tanks we just talked about, sitting 90 miles from the border, are essentially saying, don't even bother trying to take a slice of territory.
Yeah.
Because we have enough armor and firepower right here, right now, to stop you dead in your tracks.
That's the crucial insight. They must be robust enough to hold ground immediately. The Challenger 2s, along with the infantry they protect inside the Warriors, provide the necessary mass and protection to stabilize the line, absorb the initial shock, and inflict sufficient losses on an attacking force to deny that quick seizure.
So it transforms the EFP from just a symbol into a functional combined arms fighting unit.
Yes, one designed to buy time for the massive reinforcement waves to arrive.
So the heavy armor is a strategic necessity, not just military window dressing. And the training reflects this reality, doesn't it? The mod notes suggest extremely focused operations.
The training is intense and very specific. British troops are fully integrated into that Estonian 1st Infantry Brigade, and they train constantly in peer-on-peer conflict scenarios.
Meaning fighting an enemy with similar capabilities.
Exactly. They are mastering the specific terrain, the flat, open, yet densely wooded forests of northeast Estonia, which is incredibly challenging for armored operations. The commanding officer of the Queen's Royal Hussars, in one briefing note, he highlighted the immense psychological and strategic gravitas that comes from training over the very ground they might one day need to defend.
They're rehearsing defense planning at its most focused, ensuring they know the choke points, the lines of communication,
the critical firing positions, everything.
So the shield is heavy, it's permanent, and it's located right where it matters.
Yeah.
But what happens when that small, standing force gets into trouble? That measure of true deterrence, as you mentioned, relies entirely on the ability to reinforce that shield rapidly. So how do they actually prove they can do that?
Well, that's where the surge capacity comes in. The standing force is the frontline shield, designed to absorb that first blow. But the real measure of operational deterrence lies in that surge capacity. How fast and how decisively the alliance can transition that forward battle group into a full-scale defensive force capable of sustained combat.
And this raises the important question. What capability is held in reserve, and what is the publicly claimed timeline for its mobilization?
That's the key. And the UK, they actually changed their mind on the optimal force posture after the 2022 invasion. They initially doubled their presence in Estonia,
Right, I remember
but
that.
later settled on a different strategic structure.
So what was the initial thinking?
Initially, they surged personnel up to around 1,700, so essentially 2 battle groups on a bilateral basis to show immediate solidarity. However, the subsequent strategic review led to a different model announced in late 2022.
Which was?
Instead of the costly exercise of permanently basing a doubled force forward, the UK chose to hold the balance of a brigade at extremely high readiness in the UK.
Okay, explain the military math of that balance of a brigade concept.
It's a logistical trade-off. By keeping one battalion forward as the EFP and maintaining the rest of the brigade, we're talking potentially thousands of additional personnel. They're supporting armor, logistics, command staff back home. The UK reduces the permanent infrastructure and rotation costs in Estonia.
But crucially,
the moment a crisis is detected, that entire reserve force is ready to rapidly scale up the deployment from that standing 900-person battle group to a full brigade-sized defensive force.
which is capable of defending a far wider sector of the frontier.
A much, much wider sector.
Okay, that sounds great on paper, but if the core force is in the UK, how do they prove to an adversary and to the Allies that they can actually cover the distance, move all that heavy equipment, and be combat ready in time to matter?
That is precisely why the UK has prioritized these large-scale logistical validation exercises. To prove the logistical spine works under pressure, the core force assigned to reinforce Estonia is the British Army's 4th Light Brigade Combat Team, affectionately nicknamed the Black Rats.
And the validation of their ability to move is the core purpose of Exercise Hedgehog.
Exactly.
Exercise Hedgehog, which concluded in May 2025, provided a definitive metric that has now become a public symbol of NATO readiness. Tell us about that less than 48 hours number.
That sub-48-hour metric is crucial. The exercise saw thousands of troops and their accompanying equipment, which includes tanks, IFVs, support vehicles, ammunition moved from their bases in the UK all the way across Europe to the Tapa military camp in Estonia.
And the key wasn't just speed, right? It was the complexity.
It was the multi-domain logistics. They used strategic air transport for key personnel and sensitive gear, sea lift for the heavy armor to ports like Paldiski, and then road and rail movements across Poland and the Baltics.
So is that 48-hour number credible, or is that primarily a political signal designed to impress?
Well, it's both. Analysts have confirmed that achieving deployment in less than 48 hours requires perfect conditions, but the fact that they can do it, even in a simulated environment, is the deterrent signal.
It tells the adversary that any attempt at a fait accompli has a clock ticking immediately.
And that they will face a massive brigade-sized conventional response force fully engaged on the ground within 2 days. The commanding officer of the 1 LANCS battle group publicly framed the exercise not as a drill, but as a critical mission rehearsal, a test they had to pass to maintain credibility.
So the forces can get there quickly. But reinforcement isn't just about speed of transit. It's about seamless integration once they arrive.
And that requirement for integration is validated through exercises like Spring Storm.
Right, held in May 2023.
It was a massive event that saw over 1,500 UK troops surge forward to bring the resident EFP battle group to its full brigade-sized strength. But they weren't operating alone. They were fully integrated alongside 14,000 personnel from 11 other NATO countries.
That level of multinational training must be extremely complex. What does that integration actually prove?
It proves that the UK forces understand and can immediately execute the Estonian National Defense Plan. They tested everything: trench assaults, complex armored maneuvers, and high-intensity combat, combined arms warfare coordination.
So the reserve brigade can land and immediately assume its assigned sector of the defense without needing weeks of orientation.
Exactly. The lethality demonstrated during Spring Storm, as noted by commanders, sends the strongest possible message to the adversary.
Now let's widen the focus away from just Estonia for a moment. The UK isn't just handling its own deployment, it's also leading NATO's highest readiness element for the entire alliance.
That's the other major layer of UK commitment. On January 1st, 2024, the UK took the lead of NATO's Very High Readiness Joint Task Force, the VJTF.
The VJTF, they call it the spearhead force, right?
That's right.
Can you simplify what its mission is compared to the EFP?
Sure. If the EFP is the static shield in one place, the VJTF is the lightning bolt that can strike anywhere.
I like that analogy. Yeah.
It is the highest readiness element of NATO's response force, designed to be the very first force into a crisis area. Its core purpose is flexibility. It must be ready to deploy instantly. We're talking hours, not days, to any point on the eastern flank, from the high north all the way down to the Black Sea region.
And what kind of firepower are we talking about within the UK-led VJTF?
The core land component is the UK's 7th Light Mechanized Brigade Combat Team, famed historically as the Desert Rats.
An historic unit.
Very. This is a massive formation comprising approximately 6,000 troops under UK command for VJTF duty. They're highly mobile. It consists of a light cavalry regiment, 4 light mechanized infantry battalions, and all the necessary enablers: artillery, engineering, logistics, medical regiments.
Everything they need to sustain a fight immediately upon arrival.
Their mandate is to be ready to deploy at a moment's notice to defend any ally. It really underscores the UK's foundational and versatile role in NATO's collective defense architecture beyond just Estonia.
So the narrative of the UK commitment is two-pronged. A heavy, persistent shield in Estonia designed to repel, backed by a high-readiness brigade and NATO's spearhead force designed to surge in under 48 hours to prevent disaster.
That sums it up perfectly.
That is a serious, credible military posture. But as you said, it's just one piece of a much larger transformation.
It's a very large puzzle.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting, because the UK deployments are only one powerful piece of a massive, systematic restructuring that NATO has undertaken.
Indeed. This transformation, catalyzed by the 2022 Madrid summit, fundamentally redraws the map of collective defense across the entire continent.
So the entire strategic context shifted with that 2022 strategic concept.
It did. That document, the alliance's guiding document, formally returned Russia to its status as the primary adversary. The core framework driving every decision we've discussed, from tanks in Tapa to the VJTF, is the deterrence and defense of the Euro-Atlantic area. They call it the DDA concept.
So can you give us the quick translation for DDA? What does that new rulebook mean for the soldier on the ground?
In short, the DDA means a return to large-scale forward defense. It shifted planning away from managing out-of-area crises like Afghanistan or Libya back to territorial defense against a peer threat.
So it focuses on integrating forces and ensuring high readiness today.
Exactly. It replaces those older post-Cold War assumptions that allowed the alliance to rely on slow mobilization.
And the most visible outcome of the DDA concept is the physical expansion and professionalization of those enhanced forward presence missions.
Absolutely massive expansion. The original 4 battle groups established in 2016 were located in the frontline states: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland.
Right.
Following the 2022 Madrid summit, NATO agreed to deploy an additional 4, creating a robust, continuous chain of 8 battle groups stretching from the Baltic Sea down to the Black Sea.
And who are the new members of that frontline presence? Where are the new battle groups?
New presences were established in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia.
So this expansion is crucial because it addresses the southern portion of the flank, ensuring deterrence isn't geographically limited to just the Baltics.
Precisely. This means NATO's defensive line is now truly continental in scope.
And just listing the numbers of battle groups doesn't tell the full story. We talked about that shift from tripwire to repel in Estonia. That philosophical commitment meant all 8 of these battle groups had to scale up dramatically.
That's the clear trend. Scaling these forward presence units up from battalion-sized battle groups, which is around 1,000 personnel,
The full brigade-sized formations.
which can be up to 5,000 personnel. It's a massive qualitative increase in combat power.
Are we seeing this conversion happen in real time?
We are. Latvia became the first, scaling up its NATO forward presence to a brigade in July 2024, led by Canada.
Okay.
And even more significant is the German commitment. Germany formalized the decision to permanently station the 45th Panzer Brigade in Lithuania. This commitment, expected to reach 5,000 troops by 2027, is a monumental shift.
How so?
Because it moves from rotational deterrence to an embedded, nationally commanded permanent forward garrison. This shows true long-term commitment.
Now let's look at the new geographical reality. When you look at the new map of deterrence, you cannot possibly ignore the accession of Finland and Sweden.
You can't.
Strategic analysis suggests this wasn't just a political victory, was it?
Not at all. It is described in the CSIS analysis as arguably the most notable NATO achievement since the Madrid strategic concept. Their accession dramatically enhances the alliance's overall deterrent power, but specifically, it severely constrains Russia's freedom of maneuver in the entire Baltic Sea region.
Essentially, they turned the Baltic Sea, which used to be a point of Russian leverage, into what many analysts now call a NATO lake.
Precisely. Both nations bring formidable, high-end air, naval, and land combat power, and critically, they were already deeply interoperable with NATO standards.
And Finland's long-shared border with Russia brings those frontline capabilities right into the high north.
It does. And what that accession means in practical deployment terms on the ground today is still unfolding. Integration is ongoing and affects everything from intelligence sharing to logistics.
So, for instance,
Sweden has announced its intention to become a framework nation itself, leading a new EFP presence in Rovaniemi, Finland. More broadly, the geographical shift requires completely new command and control, or C2, arrangements. NATO's newest strategic command, Joint Force Command Norfolk, is being upscaled by 2025 specifically to oversee the entire Northwest Europe regional plan, fully integrating the Nordics.
This massive physical and geographical restructuring required a parallel overhaul of how NATO manages its high readiness reserves. This led to the demise of the old NATO Response Force, or NRF.
Yes, the NRF was officially replaced by the new NATO Force Model, NFM.
And the difference is the scale of ambition.
It's a huge difference. The NRF was constrained to around 40,000 troops available at various readiness levels, maybe 15 to 30 days. The NFM aims to be a vastly larger pool of forces. We're talking potentially 300,000 troops available for rapid deployment across 3 readiness tiers.
How is this NFM structured? I mean, a 300,000-person response force sounds revolutionary in scale.
It is. The NFM operates in 3 tiers of graduated readiness, all structured to meet that DDA plan we talked about.
Okay, so Tier 1.
Tier 1, highest readiness forces ready to deploy in 10 days. These are typically the forces assigned to the VJTF.
And Tier 2.
Tier 2, ready in 30 days. These provide the bulk of the initial surge capacity. And Tier 3, ready in 180 days. These are the large reserve and mobilization forces needed for sustained operations.
And who is contributing to this enormous new structure?
Well, public announcements confirm serious commitments. Germany has pledged 30,000 troops across various readiness tiers.
In the U.S.?
And crucially, the United States has formally placed much of its 80,000 forces stationed in Europe under NATO command, a major symbolic and operational step. It represents the most connected the U.S. has been to NATO command structures in decades.
But implementing such a large-scale change, even with these commitments, must come with some serious friction. What are the recognized hurdles that analysts highlight?
Well, analysts are concerned with force generation and, maybe more importantly, sustainment. While the NFM aims for 300,000 forces, readiness verification processes, especially for those Tier 1 and Tier 2 forces, have already revealed shortfalls.
Such as?
The alliance, particularly across Europe and the U.S., is grappling with severe recruitment and retention challenges, which directly undermines the readiness levels of those NFM units. Additionally, the demand for specialized enablers like intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance units, ISR, and logistics personnel is soaring, and those are hard to generate quickly.
So the NFM is a huge step in scale, but the capacity to sustain and mobilize those forces quickly and consistently remains an ongoing, resource-intensive effort.
A huge effort. And what's fascinating here is how quickly the actual threat environment changes, forcing the alliance to adapt beyond even those pre-planned NFM structures. Recent events, specifically around late 2025, confirm that Russia is constantly testing NATO's resolve and infrastructure resilience using highly aggressive hybrid warfare tactics.
And the sources paint a very sober picture of Russia's current military strength. Despite the significant losses suffered in Ukraine, the long-term threat hasn't diminished. In fact, some sources suggest Russia is now, ironically, more dangerous due to lessons learned and industrial output.
That is the consensus assessment, yes. Russia is unequivocally identified as the most significant and direct threat to Euro-Atlantic security. Critically, late 2025 intelligence confirms that Russia has almost completely reconstituted militarily to pre-war levels.
Both in material and manpower.
Both in material stocks and deployable manpower. And this reconstitution is fueled by a full-fledged war economy, prioritizing military output over consumer goods and sustained aid from partners like China, Iran, and North Korea.
So they have offset staggering losses, making them a more battle-hardened, if simplified, threat.
A very different kind of threat. And this reconstituted force is accompanied by heightened testing aggression against NATO members, moving into that gray space between competition and outright war.
Absolutely. The last few months covered in the sources, particularly around September 2025, they show a clear intensification of hostile actions. We are seeing constant cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, acts of sabotage across Europe.
And, most alarmingly, unprecedented airspace violations by Russian military drones and planes.
Can you describe those airspace violations? What makes them unprecedented?
Well, these are not mere accidental border crossings. In September 2025, there was a documented surge in coordinated incursions over multiple NATO countries, including Poland, Estonia, Finland, and even Sweden, testing the speed and coherence of NATO air defense responses.
They risked miscalculation.
Massively. And triggered high-level security consultations, moving the dial on potential direct confrontation higher than any time since the 1980s.
So how did NATO and contributing nations like the UK respond to these immediate real-time hybrid threats? They can't just send the whole NFM for every drone incursion.
No, they launched immediate, highly visible, and adaptable operational responses. As a direct answer to those September 2025 airspace violations, NATO launched Eastern Sentry.
Eastern Sentry, what is that?
It's a flexible, multi-domain vigilance activity. Its purpose is to immediately bolster the air, sea, and land posture along the entire eastern flank, enhancing situational awareness.
So what did Eastern Sentry specifically involve? What did they do?
Through Eastern Sentry, allies contributed additional fighter jets to the air policing missions, deployed advanced air defense systems to vulnerable ground sites, and sent extra frigates and maritime patrol aircraft to the Baltic Sea.
So it was a rapid deployment designed to show that any violation will be met, not just with a diplomatic note.
But with immediate, tangible military reinforcement. And this adapted response capability extended into the most sensitive area, critical infrastructure resilience, particularly undersea cables.
Right. The sources confirmed damage to a major undersea cable in the Baltic Sea, forcing an immediate specialized response.
They did.
And the undersea domain is often called the ninth domain of warfare, and it's incredibly vulnerable.
Right.
What were the specific actions launched to protect those cables?
2 specialized vigilance actions were launched simultaneously. The first was Nordic Warden, which is an advanced UK-led reaction system activated by the Joint Expeditionary Force, or JEF.
And Nordic Warden's focus is very specific.
Very. Rapidly tracking potential threats to undersea infrastructure and monitoring the movements of the Russian Shadow Fleet, that collection of poorly regulated commercial and research vessels suspected of intelligence gathering and potential sabotage.
And what was the broader NATO response in that same critical area?
That was Baltic Sentry, launched in January 2025. This is a multinational enhanced vigilance activity designed specifically to improve the security of critical underwater infrastructure across the entirety of the Baltic Sea.
How does it do that?
It integrates national assets, deploying frigates, specialized maritime patrol aircraft, and increasingly autonomous naval drones that can survey long stretches of cable deep beneath the surface, greatly enhancing the ability to detect and respond to threats under the water.
You mentioned the JEF, the Joint Expeditionary Force, in connection with Nordic Warden. Why is that UK-led group so important for managing this specific gray zone warfare?
The JEF is crucial because it operates as a coalition of 10 like-minded nations, primarily the UK, the Nordics, including Finland and Sweden, and the Baltic states. They share a common immediate security focus: the High North and the Baltic Sea region.
So they're agile.
They're high readiness, agile, and culturally aligned, which allows them to respond to crises like infrastructure sabotage faster than the broader NATO bureaucracy can sometimes move. They fill that operational gap perfectly.
And they recently completed a massive exercise that showcased this capability while simultaneously deepening their engagement with Ukraine.
Yes, that links the defense of the eastern flank directly to the ongoing conflict.
And that was Exercise Terrasis.
Completed across September and October 2025. It was the JEF's largest ever military activity, involving over 1,700 British personnel deployed across Norway, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, and Latvia. It really demonstrated the JEF's ability to operate collectively across that entire northern Baltic region.
And a Ukraine connection.
Well, the JEF simultaneously launched a new enhanced partnership designed to deliver high-level training to Ukrainian armed forces and facilitate closer collaboration on critical modern battlefield needs.
Like what?
Specifically, the sources mention collaboration on drones and counter-drone methods, advanced battlefield medicine, and methods for countering disinformation campaigns. It allows JEF nations to learn vital lessons directly from the conflict zone, what works and what doesn't, thereby strengthening their own national security and boosting their lethality profile.
It's an essential feedback loop.
It really is.
So we've built a comprehensive picture here. Immediate, heavy deterrence in Estonia. Validation of rapid reinforcement in under 48 hours. Massive alliance restructuring via the NFM and Nordic expansion. And these adaptive, specialized responses to current hybrid threats like Eastern Sentry and Baltic Sentry. This looks like NATO is executing its prepare for war to avert it strategy effectively, at least in the short term.
That short-term readiness is undeniable.
But the strategic analysis in our sources suggests a massive fundamental flaw remains when we look past the immediate front line and into the future.
A very big but.
And this is the crux of the issue. We have undeniable evidence of massive progress. Challenger 2 tanks 90 miles from the border, a brigade ready to deploy in under 48 hours, 8 multinational battle groups, 2 new, highly capable Nordic allies.
It should be a full success story.
It should be. But military analysts, according to our CSIS reports, raise a fundamental, almost existential concern about the sustainability of this entire posture.
This is the core strategic paradox the alliance faces. The sources, they split the assessment of NATO readiness into two crucial and often conflicting metrics.
Okay, let's define them clearly.
Success metric 1, ready to fight tonight.
Okay.
On this, NATO is deemed ready for immediate conflict. You've got enhanced command and control structures like new division headquarters in Latvia and Poland, the scale of the NFM, the integration of Finland and Sweden.
So the alliance has the immediate capability and the political will to prevent a quick loss of territory.
It does. They can fight tonight and hold the line.
But what is the failure metric?
Failure metric 2, readiness for a protracted war. And here the analysis is brutally clear. If the conflict lasts beyond, say, 6 months, it becomes a clash of societies, of national willpower, and most critically, of industrial capacity.
And this is where the alliance faces several critical challenges that fundamentally undermine the credibility of long-term deterrence.
They have the money, but they can't turn it into enough bullets quickly enough.
Let's start with that money problem. Defense spending is up, which is positive. The sources note 18 allies are projected to meet the minimum 2% GDP target.
Which is a huge political success. It's the first time European allies have collectively hit this goal.
But analysts question if this is actually translating into sufficient capability.
Right. They caution that 2% is a floor, not a ceiling. The key question is whether that spending is delivering the required capabilities, particularly for European nations, to reduce their reliance on the United States.
Because many allies are spending the money, but on personnel costs or on replacing old systems.
Not on buying the high volumes of battle-decisive ammunition needed for a modern war.
Can you give us a specific example of this spending challenge?
Well, the UK, for instance, announced a funded plan to reach 2.5% of GDP by 2030, a clear step forward. However, other allies, like Canada, even with increased budgetary commitments, are still projected to fall short of that 2% floor by the end of the decade.
And more fundamentally, the issue is utility.
Exactly. If a country meets the 2% threshold, but spends that money on systems that are not interoperable or fails to purchase sufficient artillery rounds, they haven't actually delivered the required capability to the alliance plan. The goal is delivering usable capability, not just meeting a metric.
And the most glaring shortfall, it relates to the industrial base. That's often referred to as magazine depth.
But capacity to produce munitions and replacement systems. Russia's war in Ukraine brutally exposed the critical state of the NATO defense industrial base.
This is arguably the greatest critical long-term concern mentioned across all our source materials.
It is a long-term high-intensity conflict, especially one involving constant artillery duels, requires constant, massive replenishment. And NATO's industrial base is currently not structured for that level of sustained attrition.
There was a shocking historical anecdote cited in the CSIS report that really anchors this fear.
Yes, that data point is chilling and highly relevant.
Oh.
During the 2011 air operations over Libya, which analysts universally agree was a comparatively minor operation,
Right.
non-U.S. NATO members began running out of precision-guided munitions within about 1 month.
1 month.
If a minor, largely air-focused campaign exhausted critical stocks, a major conventional conflict with Russia presents an existential industrial crisis.
And this realization drives the current urgency, but not yet the speed of change.
Not yet.
So why is it so difficult to fix this problem? Why can't the wealthiest military alliance in the world simply write a check and accelerate production?
The barriers are structural and political. Barriers persist in production acceleration and synchronization between nations, while NATO has launched its Defense Production Action Plan, DPAP,
which is designed to aggregate allied demand and accelerate joint procurement of everything from 155mm shells to advanced missiles.
Synchronizing that effort with the European Union's own industrial strategy, the European Defense Industry Strategy, or EDIS, remains fraught with friction.
So NATO and the EU are trying to buy the same things, but they aren't fully coordinating the effort.
Yeah, exactly. This creates complexity, redundancy, and delays. And orders are only one input. Manufacturers face labor shortages, regulatory hurdles, and long lead times for specialized components.
So the transformation of a sluggish, peacetime industrial base into a resilient, high-volume wartime capacity is inherently slow.
Very slow. The key strategic challenge, according to the analyses, is the conversion challenge, converting the vast financial wealth of the alliance into deployable warfighting material at the speed required for modern conflict.
And beyond munitions, what specific capability gaps do European nations still carry that leave them reliant on the U.S. to truly sustain a conflict?
The shortfalls are substantial across all domains, and they highlight the continued structural reliance on U.S. forces. European nations face significant gaps in heavy-lift naval forces, specialized air enablers like surveillance and refueling tankers, robust, layered air defense capabilities.
And as we mentioned, the all-important battle-decisive ammunition, particularly artillery munitions and long-range missiles.
All of it.
So even though the combined capabilities of NATO significantly outweigh Russia's, even excluding the U.S., this advantage doesn't translate to the battlefield due to a lack of available, ready, and stocked units.
Correct. The cumulative capabilities are there on paper, but the readiness and sustainability aren't. Any major combat operation in Europe would still rely heavily on U.S. forces to fill those critical land, maritime, and air force shortfalls, especially if the conflict requires sustained combat beyond 3 months.
Which undermines the European pillar of the alliance, which DDA seeks to remedy.
Right. And finally, there's the issue of resilience. The societal foundation required to sustain a massive military effort over years. This isn't about tanks, it's about civil society.
And resilience encompasses military capacity, but also civil preparedness, robust energy security, resilient supply chains.
It's essential for a protracted conflict. The NATO-EU Task Force on Critical Infrastructure has issued countless recommendations, and new bodies like the Maritime Center for the Security of Critical Underwater Infrastructure have been established to deal with the threats we discussed.
But implementation is lagging in many places.
It remains a national challenge for most older allies, and the contrast here is instructive. New members like Finland and Sweden offer invaluable expertise in whole-of-society resilience.
How so?
They have mandated civil preparedness, maintained massive reserve stocks, and ensured their populations are ready to withstand the economic and physical shock of long-term war, integrating their armed forces into the very fabric of society. Many older Western European allies lack this broad societal preparedness.
And at the end of the day, the successful defense posture relies not just on hardware,
but on the national and societal will to fight, which Ukraine has demonstrated is the true foundation of defense.
We've charted the path from a political promise in Madrid to Challenger 2 tanks sitting 90 miles from the Russian border, secured by international agreements like the NATO Status of Forces Agreement.
The SOFA, yes,
Yeah.
which legally sets the terms for UK troops to live and operate seamlessly in allied states like Estonia.
And the deterrent effect is clear, it's immediate, and it's heavy. But the logistical and industrial depth needed for a sustained conflict presents a huge, systemic, long-term hurdle that continues to plague the alliance.
This deep dive has really highlighted the dynamic, two-speed nature of modern deterrence. The immediate commitment on the eastern flank is robust, heavy, and rapidly deployable. It is brilliantly designed to execute that repel, don't expel strategy in the short term.
It prevents a Russian fait accompli and ensures NATO is ready to fight tonight.
It does. However, the crucial strategic flaw remains the agonizingly slow pace of defense industrial transformation, that conversion challenge of turning allied wealth into massive capability stocks. NATO has to strategically balance the immediate operational demands of fight tonight with the long-term industrial needs of fight tomorrow.
That brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider and mull over. The sources show that the deployment of heavy conventional armor right up near the border is explicitly intended to deter conventional attack, proving the repel don't expel doctrine is real. But this very persistent presence is simultaneously viewed by Moscow as highly provocative, with Russia formally rejecting any NATO troop deployment near its borders as destabilizing. So if these defensive measures risk escalating the perceived threat level to the point where Russia considers non-strategic battlefield nuclear weapons for coercive purposes, as some analysts suggest, then we must ask ourselves a very difficult question. Does strengthening the conventional shield require a parallel, massive, and rapid modernization of the sword of industrial capacity to truly keep the peace? Or does increased conventional strength without that long-term industrial depth simply lead to greater instability and risk of miscalculation? The answer to that question determines whether deterrence holds.
A critical assessment for every informed learner.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.